For my annual assessor report this year, I'd like to focus on line 3 of the municipal valuation return. On line 3, it asks for the 2025 certified ratio, and it says that that is the percentage of current just value upon which the assessments are based, and we've stated that it's 100%. What is the certified ratio? How is it developed? And what is the impact of maintaining or not maintaining a 100% certified ratio? Well, to understand that, first we have to understand what a sales ratio is. A sales ratio, very simply stated, is the assessed value of a property compared to the price that it actually sells for. So if you look at this spreadsheet, you can see in the column here, it says the total assessed value for each of these properties. Here's the sale price for these properties, and then there's a percent. If we look, for instance, at 3 Hayfield Lane, it's assessed at around $656,000. It sold for $750,000, and the assessed value compared to the sale price is 88%. Now, the state realizes that there will be outliers, and so it has us identify the lower 15%, the upper 15%, and exclude those from our central statistics. We want to focus on the central 70% here, which is most representative of market value. And you can see in this case, it ranges from 79% to 96%. For these sales, which are from July of this summer, right here in Wyndham. The average of those central sales is 89%. So we have an 89% average sales ratio for residential sales here in Wyndham in July, and that means that the assessed value on average was 89% compared to the sales prices of those properties. The certified ratio is similar, but in this case, instead of looking at one property, we are looking at the entire body of taxable assessed value in town, and we are comparing it to the total market value for those same properties. A 100% certified ratio means that the town's assessments are fully up to date with actual market values. But how is that determined, and who determines that? Well, the state conducts a 12-month sales ratio study, similar to the one that we just took a look at for the month of July, but in this case, it's a year. In this case, they used 195 residential sales from July of 2023 through June of 2024. They allow me to tell them which sales should be included and which ones should be excluded and disqualified from the sale, perhaps because it was a sale between family members, perhaps because it was a foreclosure property or something like that. They allow me to tell them which one should be included. Of the sales that were qualified and that were truly representative of market value, the average ratio for the central 70% was 94%. We had a 94% ratio. And then to get the certified ratio, the state allows that to be within 10% of the ratio that emerges from this study. So long as we have a minimum of a 91% ratio that comes out of this sales ratio study, we can declare a 100% certified ratio. Basically, the state says, okay, there's some variation in the market and such. You're close enough. You can just call it 100% and say that you are at market value with your assessments. What are the advantages of a 100% certified ratio? There are 3 primary advantages that come to my mind. First and foremost, and perhaps most importantly, a 100% certified ratio and looking at sales and making adjustments on an annual basis helps to generate equity. So by looking at sales on an annual basis, I can see which properties or which sort of properties are overassessed or underassessed, and then I can bring those in line with market value for the sake of equity. If for towns that do not do this on a regular basis, inequities can creep in. But by doing this regularly, we help to generate equity. Secondly, by doing this specifically at a 100% certified ratio and trying to get the assessments consistent not only with each other, but also with market value specifically, it just makes everything more simple. You can look at the assessed value, you can look at the sale price, or what you think a property could sell for, and you just compare them, apples to apples. If the certified ratio were much lower, for instance, maybe 70%, you couldn't do that. You'd have to do some backwards math and try to work into that value, and it just becomes much more complicated. So 100% certified ratio is easier to understand. Thirdly, by doing these adjustments on a regular basis, by staying in line with the market, keeping up with property data, making things fair, a revaluation becomes indefinitely unnecessary. A revaluation is needed when property values are out of whack, they're not in line with the market, there's inequities amongst them, the property data is not good. But when all of that is taken care of, a costly revaluation is unnecessary. I heard that another town here in Maine, smaller than ours, recently did a revaluation. It cost them over $300,000 to bring in an outside company to do that. By maintaining a 100% certified ratio and adjusting values as needed, that becomes unnecessary. Are there any disadvantages to a 100% certified ratio? And specifically, by adjusting properties up to market value, even as market value increases, does that lead to higher taxes? That is the question that I get. Won't higher assessments lead to higher taxes? And assessments have gone up. In 2021, the total taxable value in Wyndham was around $2.7 billion. And now we are up to $4.2 billion in value. So we have certainly gone up. Did that create an increase in taxes? Well, to answer that, I think it's helpful to use the analogy and to think of the analogy of a pie. Now, I asked Microsoft Copilot to generate an image of a pie for this presentation, and I really like the pie that it came up with because this pie is a very strange looking pie, and I don't know who would like to eat this pie. It looks maybe like stale bread with sesame seeds on it or something like that. It's very unappetizing. And this pie is going to represent property taxes, the amount of property taxes that needs to be raised in town. This is a property tax pie, and nobody wants to pay the property taxes, so this works out great. But, of course, we want the services that the property taxes provide. So the size of the property tax pie is exclusively determined by the budgets, by the county, the school, and the municipal budgets. I will say that again. The size of this property tax pie, how small or how large it is determined exclusively by the budgets. Whether I double all the assessments in town, or whether I cut all the assessments in town in half, the size of this pie is not going to change. The assessments cannot do that. What the assessments do is divide that pie into slices. And so, yes, if your property is worth twice as much as your neighbor's property, you'll pay twice as much in property taxes. But whether that means that you will pay $200 and they will pay $100, or that you pay $2,000 and they pay $1,000, is beyond what the assessment can do, because the size of that pie is determined by the budgets. Now, how does the mill rate fit into this? Well, as you can see here on this slide, the assessments have gone up, as we mentioned, but so has the budget. Look at the blue line. And the mill rate has been fairly stable, all things considered, right? The highest it was in the past couple years was $12.60. The lowest was $11.20, and now we're in the middle at $12.06. And why is that? Well, both of these have gone up, and the mill rate is the result simply of a division problem. The mill rate is the total tax to be raised divided by how much taxable value there is in town. Both of those have gone up, and so the mill rate has been relatively consistent. What if the assessments had increased, right? Because everyone's like, oh my goodness, the assessments have gone up. But the budget had not increased. What would happen if the budget was exactly the same as it was in 2021, even though the assessments had increased? What would happen to the mill rate? The mill rate would be around $8.20. And the amount of tax that the average property would be paying today would actually be less than in 2021, despite having their assessments gone way up, because part of that orange line, part of that that higher assessment in town is also new properties. And so there are even more properties now today, 4 years later, to absorb that same budget that's been in place in this hypothetical situation for 4 years. And so the mill rate would be $8.20. What if the reverse were true? What if I had not changed assessments in 4 years? There had not even been any new growth in town. We had the exact same tax base as we had in 2021, and yet the budget did increase, as it has. Well, the mill rate would be $18.53, because, and if you look at that red line, it's almost the same. It's basically the same. It's a mirror reflection of this budget increase because, again, it's a division problem. The taxable value in town in this scenario has remained flat, but the budget has increased, and so the mill rate is just keeping up right with it in order to raise the amount of taxes that we need today, which is more than it was 4 years ago. If we accounted for some growth, say $40 million a year, this orange line would creep up a little bit, and the mill rate would be about $17.50 for 2025 instead of $18.50. So do higher assessments lead to higher taxes? They do not. The valuation adjustments may fix inequities. That is exactly the purpose of it. It may shift things if market value has shifted, and for the sake of fairness, it may shift things, but they do not drive property taxes higher town-wide. The budget determines the size of the property tax pie, and the assessed values simply determine the proportional size of the slices of that pie. And the mill rate is simply the function that ensures that the budget is met. It's just the result of that division problem we discussed. So in summary, the certified ratio plays a key role in our annual state reporting. There are numerous advantages to maintaining a certified ratio of 100%, not least of which is eliminating the need for a revaluation and just simply generating equity within the assessments. And performing annual valuation adjustments and keeping the assessments close to market value to maintain a 100% ratio does not increase property taxes. It simply determines the proportional size of the slices of that property tax pie. Thank you so much for listening.